And I won't lie, I'm pretty sure this is the game that made me almost quit gaming entirely. I found myself reflecting the other day about how I am now in my 30s and I have been gaming now for the vast majority of my life. And I started to ponder upon the idea of the gaming journey. You know, when you start to think about, well, where did it all begin for me and how did I get from there to here? So I thought, let's sit down and have a chat about the games that I think shaped me into the gamer that I am today. When I think about the gaming journey as a concept, it's quite interesting to me because I think that everyone's journey is probably a little bit different. You will have some people out there who are probably like myself, who have been gaming for a long time, for the vast majority of their lives, and have played games for various systems and various eras. You'll have some people who have only really ever gamed, like say even mobile gaming, never been massive gamers, never been massively into sitting on a television and just like sitting there for hours and hours and hours kind of playing stuff. And everything in between. The person who maybe only played 5 minutes of Pac-Man in an arcade like 40, 50 years ago to now. That whole like breadth of gaming really interests me the more and more I think about it. So I thought, let's have a chat about what shaped me as a gamer and probably as a person, if I'm completely honest. So when I think back to what gaming was to me when I was very young, I remember being gifted a Game Boy Color, late 90s when it would have came out, right? Now, to me, I would have been like, what, 4 or 5, give or take? Not very old at all. Would not have known what gaming was until someone handed me this, probably to occupy me for 5 minutes, because when I was very young, I used to want to spend every single second outside, and you can imagine when it was wet and windy, it was probably a bit tough to pin me down. So I think someone gave me a Game Boy Color as a way of trying to like shackle me inside when the weather was a bit crap, so that I would, stop complaining. And I distinctly remember that one of the first games I would have played would have been Pokémon Red, which came out in the EU, what would that have been, 1999 that dropped? The classic Pokemon game, the classic generation, the OG Gen 1. And I think from there, a lot of gaming stuff spiraled. Like I had, and do still have, the Pokemon cards. I went out sort of about a year or two ago into my parents' loft and dug out my old collection of those cards, and I'm very slowly even like trying to complete those. But from a gaming perspective, Pokemon kind of stuck with me. I have played the vast majority of games from the those generations, other than one or two, which I'm very slowly trying to like get one of each gen and then get them all kind of thing, and then actually find the time to like sit and play the games that I maybe hadn't played, or go back and play the old ones. But I do distinctly remember actually asking my mum, who is probably the most... she's not a technophobe these days, right? But she's not far off of it. And asking her what the buttons were. I remember she was actually able to show me how to operate the Game Boy. And then I fell in love with this thing. I must have completed Pokemon Red 15 times when I was younger, just playing it over and over again. I would catch as many as I could. Up at that point, I didn't have a link cable, and I didn't know anyone who didn't have Red, interestingly. So you could only go as far as what you could. And then I would just restart and just do it again and just go on that loop, which is crazy to me that in 2026, I don't tend to do that with games too often. I don't tend to complete the same game over and over again. I know some people get a lot of comfort in doing that. I'm not great with that, but it's really interesting that back then I used to do that a lot. And then I think this game came out before Pokemon Red, but I got it not long afterwards, and it was Harvest Moon for the Game Boy, when they then brought out a Game Boy Color version of that to like upgrade the colors and stuff. I remember playing this quite a bit, but having absolutely no idea what was going on or what to do, and restarting this thing a few times. And I won't lie, I'm pretty sure this is the game that made me almost quit gaming entirely, purely and simply because I had no clue. I think I was too young ultimately to be playing a game that was this level of complexity. Looking back now, it's not that difficult at all. And then you can think of the games that eventually became spiritual successors a long time later. Like Stardew Valley is a great game. Clearly has a lot of love poured into it by the guy who made it, but he was clearly inspired by these old Harvest Moon games and how there was certainly a period of time, I don't know if they ever went back to releasing them again, but there was a long period of time where those games sort of lost touch of what they were. But yeah, like I was far too young to be playing this ultimately. Thankfully, I must have put it to one side, or I must have figured out what to do. I'm not entirely certain, but I didn't give gaming up, thankfully. And then around about this time, I would have got a PS1, I would have got a television in my room, which I remember at the time thinking that this was just the coolest thing. Like having a TV in there. I had like a cabin bed as well to like open up the space in the room. I even had like a couch in there that was like doubled as a sofa bed for when friends would come over to stay. So I had the setup that hilariously, I am 32 years old. I don't have a gaming setup in air quotes like that in a room that isn't a living room. But when I would have been 5 or 6, I did have that in my bedroom, which is kind of funny. And I remember distinctly getting Croc 1 for the PS1. So I would have played that 1999 or 2000 at that kind of time. I know the game came out in 1997. That wasn't when I played it, and I thought this game was brutally difficult, but like just an insane amount of fun. And I actually went back and completed it last year just to kind of tick it off and finally finish the thing, because I don't think I ever did. I think I got like 2/3 or 3/4 of the way through the thing. Loved it, man. The game maybe doesn't hold up that well. It's quite cool that they've remastered that since, but back then, oh man, those tank controls have not aged well at all. But a game that was a lot of fun, a game that holds a special place in my heart because it's just kind of kooky and just kind of funny. And graphically, that style, I think, has still aged reasonably well. I quite like the way that game looks, even if it doesn't necessarily play that well. And it might have also been the sign of age, right? Like if it was 1999 or 2000, I was around 5 or 6 years old. That's maybe slightly more difficult a game than I could have played at that age, but I must have done something right because I still did. And then around about that kind of time, I would have got the third Spyro game. Now, interestingly, I missed out on the first two when I was younger. I've since played them as part of the Spyro sort of remaster trilogy that they brought out years ago, and they're pretty challenging. The first one's pretty challenging from memory, but the third one for me really, really stands on its own 2 feet. Like, this game has aged superbly well, in my opinion. Going out and like hunting those eggs and getting the little quips that you would get from the dragons that you would find and stuff, that was a lot of fun. I actually have this really distinct memory of playing it where I finished it a few times, because obviously back then you would have had a memory card to store your saves, but I would have had I think the PS1 memory card wasn't that big, and I had a habit of deleting saves. I have a habit of just not putting the memory card in the console. So I completed this a couple of times, and I do distinctly remember there was one playthrough that I ran through one day, and I got towards the end, and you had to get X amount of gems and X amount of eggs, whatever it was, to do the final boss battle. And then to do that final boss battle, you then had to get after you then did the final boss, you needed to get, was it like most of the eggs, all of the eggs, more gems or something, to get into that final area where you could run around and get all the gems back from moneybags. It was something like that. I remember glitching that when I was young. I don't know how I did it, but I certainly had not even done the final boss. Never mind, got to the point where I was allowed to do this. And I distinctly remember thinking I'd broke my game. I distinctly remember thinking, shit, I have completely knackered this for myself. So what am I going to do? Oh my god, my PlayStation's broken. I'm going to have to tell my dad that we broke it. But then I turned it off and turned it back on again. I couldn't make it happen again. And then I was gutted because I managed to avoid this bit entirely. I think I must have eventually got back in. A lot of key memories in that game, playing that thing over and over and over. And there was a lot of really, really good PS1 games back then. Like obviously you had like some solid Rugrats games, but I never played a lot of the ones that a lot of people deem as classics now, like Resident Evil, like Silent Hill, Metal Gear Solid. Until recently, I've started playing through them, and it's weird to me when you think about that gaming journey that mine just went on this totally different, like very kid-friendly tangent. Like when you think about it back, like Metal Gear is like quite a mature game, I would think. And there's people that I think, if you were 5 or 6 years older than me, you would have played that game probably when it came out, and you'd be able to appreciate it like a lot. I think if you gave me that game when it first came out, I'd have had no clue what was going on. Probably couldn't play it. Probably couldn't complete it when I got frustrated. Whereas I can look back on that and go, well, the games I played were absolutely amazing, and I had a lot of fun doing it, but they were very kid focused. And it's really interesting actually to think that some people would have probably never played those Spyro games when they were younger, and some people would have like loved like Resident Evil, for example, and I just didn't touch it for whatever reason, which is kind of crazy to think about. So now pushing forward to the PS2, I don't think I had one when it first came out, like the first 12 months, but I do remember getting one. It was the chunky PS2 that I had, and I loved this thing. This is probably the console for me that cemented me never leaving the house again. I think. And probably if it wasn't for the PS2, I don't know if I'd be sitting here today still gaming, because this was those that kind of like formative years, and the bangers that I had when I was younger have stood the test of time, in my opinion. Like, you've got the Ratchet and Clank series, and you've got Jak and Daxter. Those games where that level of humour mixed in with a little bit of darkness, that's probably something that's carried through to now, 32-year-old me. And these games are phenomenal. Like, I think weirdly the one I played the most would have been, I think it was Ratchet 2 and Ratchet 4 and Jak 2. Those are the ones that I played a ton of and must have completed them multiple times each. They all hold up to me. The humour in there holds up to me massively. And then I think once I would have been finished with these, it must have been around that sort of time when I was outside kicking a ball, and I must have like heard from a friend or something that you could play football games, because I do remember getting FIFA 2002, which I still have, and 2005, which I'd obviously got a few years later. I played a shed load of these, 02 in particular, a lot. And I think it was just going, like getting a career mode, going Rangers and just playing it over and over and over again. I can't remember though how far in you used to be able to play in those games before it had like an arbitrary cutoff. I can't remember if it ever did, but I even like remember doing ones where if there was like a Scottish Cup final, and on the lead up to the game, I'd be so excited, so I would then play the Scottish Cup final in that as like a kick-off match and choose like, Rangers if we were in it, or like the underdogs, and try and, if we weren't, like try and win kind of thing. All that kind of stuff, which it just makes you smile when you think back to that sort of era. And yeah, a whole lot of happy memories. Obviously, the FIFA games then continued into the 360 days, and they've all changed now with EAFC. I must admit, I haven't played them for a couple of years now, mainly because nothing really holds up to me. 2002, 2005 is like pinnacle. Though I played, it was probably the first or second year when they introduced like online pro clubs. I played a lot of that. And yeah, obviously played a lot of Ultimate Team, whatever else. I think when it became far too pay to win, it kind of lost me a little bit, which is a shame. But a lot of happy memories on there. And 02 in particular, just, man, what a game. So, so good. And all mixed into this time, I would have also been playing some racing games as well, which is weird to think that I played a lot of these. And then there's like a sort of gap for me where I didn't play an awful lot of the sort of sim racing or more simulation, less arcadey games. But these ones stood out, like Gran Turismo 3, which I think was 2001, and Gran Turismo 4, which was 2004. I played these a lot. 4 in particular. 4 for me is like one of the sort of the best non-arcadey racing games of all time. Now, I know that it is not the most accurate game in the world, right? I get that. It came out for the PS2. It's not going to be. I remember even like playing one of the endurance races, and I can't remember how long it was, if it was like one of those 8, 12 or 24-hour races that you had to do, and like doing a couple of hours of it and then pausing the PlayStation and leaving the PlayStation on overnight, hoping that it didn't crash, and then jumping back on and playing another couple of hours, and spending like a week doing like one race, when you got school or whatever else, you're getting up early for school and then playing that for half an hour to get a couple of laps in and stuff like that. I must have completed 4 eventually. I think I do remember completing all the races in that. Never ever played like against other people. I never had like people over to play it, but I do distinctly having a lot of fond memories on those kind of games. And I think that eventually led to me, like, I've liked a couple of the Forza Motorsport games. I haven't played many of Gran Turismo since then. I feel like I've played 5 and thought it was pretty decent on the PS3. I kind of enjoyed that. I haven't played anything past that. I feel like I own 7, maybe. It's maybe in the shelves behind me. I can't remember. But there was something about games back then. I think it's probably like a nostalgia thing, right? There's definitely a nostalgia element to this. That games back then maybe just had that kind of special place. I would love to go and play a more simulation racing one these days and love it as much. But whilst I enjoy it, I don't get that same urge. I do think that the last Forza Motorsport was pretty decent. We played a few games of that online, my friends and I, a few years ago now. But Forza Horizon 6 does come pretty close to scratching that itch, even if it is very much arcade focused and not realistic focused. So there's clearly some element of these racing games from then to now has pulled through for me. I'm actually nearly finished Forza Horizon 6. I think I'm at the point now where there is only, I want to say, 3 achievements left for me to get. Now, I'm not a guy who goes for getting all the achievements in games very often. I only tend to do it if either A, I'm playing something and it's really, really easy, which doesn't happen too often these days. There's not an awful lot of games that come out that tick that box for me that I am already playing anyway. I tend to do it for games where I love the game so much that I want to go and get all the achievements. So I've done that with, or I'm in the process of doing that with this, where I've only got, I think it's the level 100 online achievement, which is going to take forever. There's a season reward achievement where that's just get the points each week and you'll eventually get it, and then there's like one other one for getting all the promotions in a job, which is a bit of a slog, and I think I'm just over halfway there and I'll get there eventually type thing. That is a great game, and I think if I hadn't played Gran Turismo 3 and 4, I probably wouldn't have much love for driving games now, even if these ones are really suited to having a little bit less time. Like, I can jump in for 20 minutes, play some stuff, and then go if I have to go, like, I don't know, put a washing out, or me and the wife are going out, or whatever. These games are really, really suited to what life is now for me, which is great. Fantastic. Love that. And credit to Gran Turismo 3 and 4. I wouldn't have that same love if it wasn't for them. Another thing that's interesting to me, and I'd love to know down in the comments anyone else is like this when it comes to certain genres of games. I find that if I didn't like a type of game before the age of like 12, maybe, that's tended to stick with me now, near 20 years, well, actually 20 years later. So stuff like puzzle games is a really, really interesting one. I have never been a massive puzzle gamer. There's the odd one that is the odd exception, right? Something like, well, I don't know, Peggle is probably a puzzle-ish type game, right? I remember playing that for the Xbox 360 and really, really enjoying it. But ultimately, it's never been something that I've been massively fussed on. I cannot think of any Game Boy Advance games, PS1, PS2 games that I had that were purely puzzle type games. And I think that's carried through to the point where, like, even I can get quite easily stuck at puzzles in games full stop. And it catches up with me now, where I think it was a couple of years ago, might have been further back than that. In fact, yeah, it was during COVID. I was streaming a little bit at the time and I was playing through the Uncharted games. I used to get stuck at puzzles in them. Now, I'm pretty sure the puzzles in those games aren't actually that tough, but my brain, even though for a living I have to use my brain to solve problems, I can't do it when it's in a digital gamey format, and I can't understand why, and that is still permeated through to this day, which I think that kind of funny in retrospect. That is quite interesting, going back and watching me try and solve those puzzles, that I lose my mind watching me do this and just think and shake my head, what on earth are you doing? What are you doing? So speaking of the Xbox 360, I then got one probably about a year after it came out. I had really, really good memories of playing Gears of War at a friend's house the year before I got mine, when the game, what would that have came out? 2006? So I played that in 2007 when I got mine. I loved that. Loved Gears of War so much. An awful lot of time spent online. That was probably the first game that I played religiously online. Loved the campaign as well, right? Like, don't get me wrong. Fantastic story. That trilogy tells a really, really good story. I'm going to have to go back and play that at some point. I'm going to have to find a way of going back and playing those campaigns. hold that thought. We'll come back to that in a few months' time. And these games were great. Like the online, superb, story, superb. They looked great as well, and they played phenomenally well. And I think there was a couple of us that used to play it and love it a lot. I was never like any good, I don't think. I wasn't god awful, which I'm okay with that. But I just had a lot of fun playing them, like playing like 19 rounds raving down over and over and over again. It was just a lot of fun. And then I think the game that then came out not long after that, that cemented me going, yeah, I quite like shooters now, would have been COD 4, which came out 2007, the year I got my 360 after me getting Gears of War 1. That game is just a masterpiece. And in my humble opinion, this game is the masterpiece. The campaign is fantastic and plays well, even if it may not be that long. But the multiplayer had that serious staying power for me. I know that when it comes to talking about Call of Duty games from this time, everyone has a favourite, right? And for me, yes, Modern Warfare 2 was probably the better one to play with friends because it was a smidgen more accessible. Party chat came out for the Xbox at the same time. It was like the stars aligned for this game. It was perfect. But COD 4 to me just beats it. Like, just beats it, no more. As probably my favourite ever shooter of all time. Again, I was never great at this online. I wasn't terrible either. And I really, really enjoyed this. I wish when they remastered this, I played it more. And I can't remember if it was just like other things going on in life at that time and I just didn't. But I know a couple of friends of mine spent, including Editor Craig, spent a absolute ton of time when this remastered and they all thought the same. This game holds up. Looked great at the time, played phenomenally well. And that kind of stayed with me. Like, I think I played a lot of the Call of Duties like after that. I was never a massive fan of World at War. I know a lot of people were. But I really did like Black Ops 1 and 2. And it maybe kind of tailed off after that point when like Advanced Warfare and Ghosts and all that not as good games, shall we say, all came out. But I think that game kind of cemented me as, all right, okay, I'm a 360 guy. And then, you had like Gears of War 2 and 3 came out, which was great. Halo 3, I'd never played 1 and 2, but 3 came out. That was superb. 4 was also pretty great. And you kind of continue on from there. And I never really looked back, if I'm honest. Obviously, then you had Fallout 3, and you had Oblivion, and that got me right into Bethesda games. Hope that we get a Fallout 5 and an Elder Scrolls 6 at some point. That would be nice. But those games made me also appreciate RPGs as well. So when you think about all the games up until now that we spoke about at this point in the video, like there's a lot of games here that carry over to now, to the current day, that to me stand the test of time, and without those, I don't know where I would be gaming wise. Then I would say the Xbox One era is where things maybe in hindsight got a little bit shaky, and I think a lot of people have problems with the Xbox this generation that we're speaking about, and it's probably fair. I own maybe like a Billy Bookcase shelf of Xbox One games. And there's a couple of games in there I played a reasonable amount. I played a few of the Call of Duties. Thought some of them were okay, some of them were not as good, shall we say. And there's obviously some FIFAs in there, that was fine. Fallout 4, great. Really, really like Fallout 4. I know a lot of some people don't like it, but I think it's pretty good. There's a lot in there that I thought at the time I probably played more than I actually did. There's games there. Gears of War 4, for example. I don't think I played it that much, even though I loved 1, 2, and 3. And I don't know why that was the case. And there's some games in there like Sunset Overdrive. Quite enjoyed it. Never ever went back and finished it. Titanfall. Played a bit of Titanfall. Maybe not more than 10, 15 hours. The Witcher 3. I remember buying that, thinking, right, I'm going to love this. I love RPGs. My wife's actually played it through the Switch and absolutely loved it. Couldn't get past the first 3 hours. I don't know what happened this gen. I don't know what happened, that everything just kind of dipped a little bit for me, and even like handheld wise wasn't playing an awful lot. And it's weird that this is maybe the gen that maybe could have lost me, but I feel like at the time I must have been playing stuff on PC. I must have been playing stuff like World of Warcraft and games like that. Probably still like playing a Call of Duty that I would like when it came out for the Xbox One. Like, right, okay, I like that Call of Duty, let's play that one, and then didn't play anything else. It's probably stuff like that, and then a FIFA that would maybe grab me. This gen, currently, I've kind of experimented with a few other things. Like, yeah, Forza Horizon, great, really, really like it. It's a lot of fun. But it's been interesting to experiment with stuff like going back in time and playing like the Metal Gear games that I've not played. Playing through some like Resident Evil stuff. I want to play through Final Fantasy at some point, and going back to those old generations that clearly just grabbed me and I loved a lot. But I think the Xbox One and PS4 generation was the one that was just a little bit shaky in hindsight, which then kind of brings me to now, June 2026. And obviously, as I'd say, I spoke about Forza Horizon. Really enjoying 007 First Light. I know the game's not that long, so I've been kind of like deliberately taking my time playing through it, knowing that I kind of don't want the experience to end just yet. I'm not ready for it to end. I'm maybe on like chapter 6 of 10, but really enjoying it. We have some plans though for the channel in the future, which is waiting on some things in my personal life lining up. I'm in the process of moving house. Things are taking their time. Some things have been delayed, which is obviously quite frustrating when you know you're ready to go. You're ready to move on. That is why there's 1 or 2 boxes just at the bottom of this camera shot here. There's a big project that the 3 of us are working on that I'm going to guess it'll be late August or September before that drops, that I think fits into some of the 360 stuff we spoke about. We'll just leave it at that. And that's probably going to be something that's going to be a big undertaking, and it's very ambitious. That's going to get me playing a lot of stuff. Though in hindsight, probably the PS2 is the one that's like the one that got me. But the 360 is the one that made me stay forever, I think, in terms of like this hobby. You know, like I love gaming, right? Like I am always playing something, right? Like I am always like either tinkering around with a random game, or in the case of right now, juggling a couple and loving every minute of it. I don't think that there is a day that goes by these days that I don't play something. Even if it's like I've had a really busy day and it's only for 5 minutes, it's still always something, because this hobby to me is class. I think that's where the collecting part of it eventually came in, is wanting to try and touch base with the stuff that I used to love, and then trying to go out and find, okay, from like certain generations or certain consoles that I maybe never had or didn't enjoy as much at the time as I probably could have, going out and hunting the things that I didn't know existed and giving them a bit of time and love. Like the PS1 section above me, I didn't have a crazy amount of PS1 games when I was younger, but I do quite like that everything above me I've kind of played and loved since, and I want to add to that as the weeks, months and years go on. The 360 is the same, love that console, but there's a ton of 360 games out there, like big hitters, that I have never played before, and it is quite nice knowing that, well, I didn't have the disposable income then, because obviously I was a child, but it's kind of cool knowing that, you know, we can go through these and we can collect them and play them and share that experience together. But I think without this journey of having handheld games that I barely knew what was going on, all the way to stuff that I've spent hundreds of hours in, to now, that journey with its peaks and troughs and ups and downs, I wouldn't be here without that today. And I want to know down in the comments, what is you guys' gaming journey? I'm not asking for an essay though. If you're going to give me an essay, I'm probably going to read it, right? High level, like what was the kind of journey that you took? Because obviously your age and where you were in life and where the people around you were in life is probably going to dictate what games it is you played and how early you're into this, how late you came into it, and the things and stuff that you've done. So let us know, because that's the kind of stuff that we love reading about here on the Nerd Fandemic. It's the kind of things that really excite us and interest us. We're going to have some game hunts coming up in the next few weeks, because Saunders is off on a work trip, and sometimes he gets some downtime where he gets to go hunt around and find some stuff for us to all watch on the channel. But I've enjoyed chatting about this. I love speaking about games, let's be honest. I wouldn't be here, we wouldn't have made videos for over a year at this point if it wasn't for that. But we want to hear what you guys have to say as well. So take care and see you all next time.